Hey guys, Freddy here. Welcome back to another retro magazine thing. Because this time we're going to be looking at White Dwarf Magazine Issue 101. Now it's been about 3 or 4 years since I've last looked through White Dwarf. And incidentally, it's the same gap as between those issues, which were in the 60s, and this one, 101, about 4 years has passed. So it'll be interesting to look through that, especially as Games Workshop had changed as a company in those intervening 4 years. They were still very much a role-playing game company though. So we'll still look through that and we'll see lots of things we like. Now we'll have a look through that on the desktop in a wee second, and as usual I'll be back at the end of the video with some summary type thing. But before I do that, I'd like to take a moment to talk about my patrons, who are wonderful, wonderful people who make all of this possible. So I'd like to thank them from the absolute bottom of my heart. Their efforts are so much appreciated. Now if you'd like to join them and help support the channel, and I sure wish you would, or you'd like to see these videos a week early, or you'd like to see our Patreon exclusives that we put up over there, or one of the other levels of patronage we've got, then we've got a Patreon in the description down below. If you check it out, it'd be very much appreciated. But anyway, let's have a look at White Dwarf issue 101. So, this is White Dwarf issue 101, and inside we can see that it's dated May 1988. Although the way magazines work in the UK, that May means that's the month it's supposed to be on the shelf for. So it had actually been released the month before, so April 1988. And I've covered some issues of White Dwarf before, but they were issues back in their 60s, so about 4 years before this. And the transformation of White Dwarf is significant by this point. White Dwarf these days, in the 2025, is basically just a pamphlet on miniatures, on their war games, on how to paint stuff. It's not really about role-playing games at all anymore. Now, the issues I covered back in the 60s covered lots and lots of role-playing games, including ones which Games Workshop had nothing to do with. But at this point, Games Workshop was still publishing role-playing games, including RuneQuest and Paranoia, as it mentions, as well as Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, Warhammer Fantasy Battle, and all that kind of stuff. So, they cover all that stuff within the magazine. They're not focusing on Dungeons & Dragons and games that Games Workshop has nothing to do with, but they are still covering role-playing games, stuff that Games Workshop is releasing in the UK. So it's still very much a role-playing magazine, although the focus is starting to go over to the Games Workshop and Citadel miniature stuff. So there's a lot of stuff on painting miniatures, there's a lot more stuff on the war games. And the way they branded it, so it's Games Workshop Presents, putting their logo big at the top of the page, I think is starting to show the indications. Now this is their special Blood Bowl issue, because Blood Bowl, their American football rugby-like board game, including fantasy races, was just coming out. This is going to introduce us to it. There'll be probably 4-6 pages inside talking about the background of that game. They did a few things around this period. They did an issue on Dark Future. They did 40k when it came out originally. And inside, so we've got the contents page that we looked at there. We've also got a full page advert for our the Enemy Within campaign, Power Behind the Throne, the 4th part of the campaign, which we've covered previously on the channel. And that's very nice, lots of artwork, and it's a fabulous piece of adventures. And we'll not bother with the contents page, because we're going to be going through it page by page. We go straight in, and there's an advert for Citadel miniatures. We've got the Imperial Army Landspeeder, the Chaos Renegade Limited Edition, Squat Thud Gun, from when the Scots were an independent army, and the Eldar War Robot, back before it was an Eldar Dreadnought, along with smaller battle drones. We've got a talk about a competition, Pavement Plaza, Paranoia at the Plaza. So showing a big queue outside, various people, one person turning up in cosplay. And, oh, I skipped past, they label all the illustrators within. So we've got Russ Nicholson, Tris Morrison, Ali Morrison, Kevin Walker, Andy Drew Wildman, Gary Chalk, who did the artwork for the Lone Wolf fantasy game books, Pete Nifton, and Dave Andrews. And then we've got a big section focusing on the artwork of Russ Nicholson. Lots of his artwork from different games and magazines. And it's lovely stuff. It's really nice to look. We've got some 40k stuff here, Ultramarines when they still had the beaks. Lots of Warhammer stuff. Chaos Spiky. He's 38. Race, another Scotsman. Star sign, Scottish. So, a fellow countryman of myself. Then we've got an advert for Warhammer Siege, a larger scale battle game than Warhammer Fantasy Battle. And then we've got a section for Warhammer Fantasy Battle, stratagems, ruses and ploys. Talking about cost effectiveness of different units, army balance, battlefield stratagems, and a summary at the end. We go over, there's a bit about the Games Workshop stores, where all of them are located, although I don't see the Glasgow store in the list, which I used to visit quite often. We've got Critical Mass, Dave Langford's book review section. I'm not really seeing anything jumping out here. The Don't Panic, the official Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy Companion by Neil Gaiman, which I find amusing because this is before Neil Gaiman was a name in his own right. I also found it amusing, Books I Did Not Receive for Review, 2061 Odyssey 3 by Arthur C. What's His Name, about which I've heard fairly dismal reports. I actually love that book. I thought it was very good. Anyway, we've got the letters page, Blanche Itsu, where Dave Blanche, is it? John Blanche, sorry, talks about how to dry brush figures. So painting advice, very nice stuff. Enter your painted miniatures in the Golden Demon Awards, 1988. We've got Thrud the Barbarian, or Thrud the Farmer, where he's been brainwashed and somebody damages one of his plants, so he absolutely tears them to shreds. He's going to make them pay. Then we've got our first adventure for RuneQuest, focusing on the Griffin Island, Trouble at the Number 1 Inn. And this is an adventure where the players are hired to steal something from some greenstone from, I'm trying to see the different race they are, Slodges. So they're going to be stealing some greenstone. The person who hires them to do it is going to hold off paying them because he's actually trying to lure them into a trap where somebody else will steal the greenstone from them, so they'll never get paid. And that's the twist of the adventure. It's not much to it. It's kind of fun stuff, though. We've got an advert for the Mighty Fortress for Warhammer Siege. Tracking the Sludges, the Sludge Bandits. We've got loads of stats here, including Bandit Leader that they'll be facing off. Returning to Soldier Port when the pirates raid them. We've got adverts for some back issues. Yet more stats to the adventure, the different pirates. Heroes for Dungeon Quest. So Dungeon Quest was their spin-off of Hero Quest, where they wanted to have all the rights. Instead of MB Games having a bunch of the rights to Hero Quest, they wanted to do their own version. I don't really think I know anybody who bought that. Yet more stats for the adventure. Pirate's Plan, the Dwarfs, the Dwarf Adventurers, lots of stuff, lots of little twists in it. An advert for Curse of the Mummy's Tomb, which I actually have a copy sitting up on the shelf, which I've not covered for the channel yet. Mail order, different things, the Warhammer campaign, Curse of the Mummy's Tomb, Warhammer Siege, Power Behind the Throne, etc. And then we're going on to the section of Blood Bowl. Well, it's got 11 heads, 22 legs, 2 wings, and light to stomp you into the ground. This is Blood Bowl. So it's introducing the background stories, where it comes from, showing, cheerleaders, the elves against some orcs or goblins there, talking about different teams, how it's played, just roughly introducing you to it. A sort of play-by-play going through a game. Showing off a couple of the heroes of it. Their Blood Bowl Heroes Kit, or Players Kit. Varag Gulchua and Griff Oberwald. And then we're on to Warhammer Fantasy Battle. The Orc Bolt Thrower. So showing you how to assemble it. And some information. An advert for Lone Wolf, Joe Dever, Book 12, The Masters of Darkness. Continuing on, we've got the Affair of the Hidden Jewel, Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay Adventure. This is a fairly simple one where the players can find 2 contracts, different notices advertising contracts, and there will be twists to them. Some very nice stuff going in, the plot thickens, everything isn't as it first appears. We've got locations, and as we carry on through, some adverts for the Orc Bolt Thrower and Chaos Warriors. We've got some very nice maps. The Crossed Lances, and the Castle of the Black Arrows. Then we've got Chapter Approved, so Warhammer 40k section, talking about the Infinity Circuit. So artificial intelligence is the Eldar use, where they upload their memories into the Infinity Circuit and then implant it in Spirit Warriors and different things, the Ghost Warriors, what later became Eldar Dreadnoughts. We've got the stats and write-up for the Squat Thud Gun, the Landspeeder Army variant. We've got some more adverts for Blood Bowl miniatures, showing them nicely painted up. Advert for TM Games. And then we've got the third adventure, Bob Avery's Games Day 87 Paranoia scenario. Clone Day Surprise. Now this is an adventure where the players have just been promoted to Red Clearance, and they will be helping out a high programmer celebrate his birthday. But the twist on the adventure is that you're supposed to get the players to act it out. So if there's a point where the players have to dance or do aerobics, then you're expecting your players to stand up at the table and do it. If they talk about dice, then the computer's going to be awfully suspicious that they're talking about something traitorous. But that kind of takes a lot of the fun out of the game. You know, the player cannot mention their mutations, their secret societies, which make up so much of Paranoia characters, because that would be admitting to it in front of the computer. There's lots of things here, props you can use to flesh it out. I don't rate it very highly at all, but there's some amusing ideas in there. Your mileage may vary. This might be the kind of thing that for Paranoia you would find hilarious. Heavy Metal, which is their miniatures painting section, showing a step-by-step guide to shields, showing various miniatures holding different shields. Spot the Ball. So you're supposed to guess where the ball is, and the person closest to it wins a prize. Advert for Asdevium Games, which as far as I know is still going. Reader's Survey, you know, which games are you playing? Which sections did you find most useful? Send it back in. The Index Astartes. So background information on various legions of Space Marines. The Firehawks, Mantis Warriors in different colour schemes. The Nova Marines. Some of these still going to this day. I believe they've become quite major. Additional rules for Warhammer siege battles. So subterranean assault. Perhaps you're digging under the ground of the walls. The end of the siege. And biological warfare. You know, chucking diseased sheep into castles and things. Traitors and spies. We've got rules for mercenary players in Blood Bowl. The freebooter cards, which as I said were on the back cover. So we've got rules for including that. An advert for Chaos Thugs, and then, as I said, the freebooters cards and the stats for those freebooters on the inside. So you can cut up the back cover of your magazine if you so wish, which obviously I never did. So that was White Dwarf issue 101. And as I said, things had changed quite a bit between the 4 years when the last issues I checked. We've no longer got loads and loads of Dungeons & Dragons articles in it, and the number of games has been trimmed down to just the ones that Games Workshop was publishing. But getting RuneQuest, Paranoia and Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay in one magazine is no bad thing. It's a good selection of adventures, and while we're starting to get more onto wargaming things, painting miniatures, there's still a load to love in there. It was definitely a guaranteed pickup. I got every issue of this. Really, really good stuff in there. But anyway, as usual, I think I've been wittering on for quite long enough, so thank you very much for watching. But as always, most of all, you look after yourselves, and I'll catch you later. Bye now.